Hello coaches and welcome to this edition of Give and Go Live. My name's David Newbury and I'm joined by my colleague Ian Barker. Hello Ian.
Hello David, pleasure to be here.
Ian, we are in the third presentation of 4 looking at the front line of our attack, our striker line, and in the first 2 presentations we've looked at 1 striker and then 2 striker combinations, and in this presentation we're going to look at the option of playing 3 strikers. So would you like to discuss some of the implications of that in terms of numbering?
Sure. I think there are 2 broad interpretations of how we might play with 3 up front. Again, broad, but here's one of them, the highlighted yellow one. So we essentially have a left-sided striker, a right-sided striker, and then a central striker. So 3 up top, spread fairly evenly across the top of the field. And so essentially our offensive shape is a line, if you will, or fairly flat. The other interpretation, and I'll kind of draw it with arrows, would be you have a 9 here and a 9 here, and then you'd have a 10 here. And so you'd end up with kind of a triangle of players, a little bit narrow, but you'd actually play with a triangle. So there's a couple of interpretations. So when you think about forwards, assigning them a number, 7 is wide right, 11 is wide left, 9 is your high, and should you choose to play with a 10, 10 is underneath, not shown in this particular diagram. Those are all potential interpretations that the coach should be mindful of, because your 3 up front will look a lot different potentially than my 3 up front.
A good example, I think, of certainly a winger, although certainly in this case I've referred to Alex Morgan as a number 10. So we often think of Alex Morgan as a central striker, but what she'll often do as the game is progressing and the ball is moving forward, she'll drift out wide in to the left or drift out to the right, so she can come, if she's coming from the right, she's coming in on her left foot, coming in towards goal, whereas on the left, of course, she is now using her left strength to then go down more of the side, but she'll drift into that space between the fullbacks and the central defender. And I think the attributes of that winger type player is certainly pace, someone who has the ability to beat the opponent inside and out either way, and the ability for us as a coach to move them from one side of the field to the other. They have to always remain alert. So they're not a free player. They're not someone who's just drifting out. Often we'll expect them to defend. So they'll always have to be conscious when we do win possession, what's their starting position. The ability to play 1 versus 1, dribbling and finishing, of course, is crucial when you are playing out and drifting out into those wide players in the wide positions, because you're always going to have at least one player that you have to beat before you go to goal. And then that sophistication that they'll have with and without the ball is crucial. So Ian, let's talk about some of the features of a 3-person front line.
Yeah, before I do that, I'll just comment that I think when you've used an American example like Alex Morgan, those listeners that are familiar with Landon Donovan was a player that could play in anywhere across the front line, in any orientation, be it a 1-man, 2-man, or 3-man front line. Landon Donovan was a player that possessed the ability to be a 7, a 9, 11, or a 10 at any given time. So it's credit to this country, we've created those players, but very often in the youth game you won't have that degree of technical or tactical flexibility with an individual. So some highlights, if we play with 3 spread wide, it will engage the entire back line. So it can really negate the attacking threat of the opponent's back line in transition, because we do tend to tie them up. We tend to keep the other team honest and keep some players behind the ball. David made a really interesting point in regards to which wing players play on. And let's look at the youth model. So very often your players are exclusively right-footed. It's hard to find left-footed players very often. So let's say you have 2 right-footed players playing 7 and 11. The natural movement for the 7 will be here. But a right-footed number 11, his or her natural movement will probably be this way. So you could actually have some fun, not being disappointed that you don't have left wingers, but using your right-footed wingers in different ways. So playing them off of different sides, playing your team a little bit asymmetrically could be a positive feature if you have a particularly 1-footed team. And then the other feature here too which I think is to be understood, is if 7 can get the ball and support of 2 is good, the potential for overlapping runs, combination play here, and of course on the other flank could be really great because you can get in behind. And we know that players would rather defend with things in front of them, behind them. So if 3 and 2 are willing to run forward, you can create potentially numerical overloads to the positive in the wide space. And I believe our video will show a little bit of that ability to maybe get a 2v1 in the wide space. Very good. We'll take that one.
Yes, we'll always. It's always nice to finish with a goal, Ian. So let's talk about some of the challenges now we are associated with the 3-striker formation.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that would worry me a little bit. Is if these 3 stay high exclusively, then there's space occurs, and I'll give you an idea. Some space in here, some space in here, where the opponent can potentially exploit us if they come forward. So if you keep the 3 very high out of possession, you open up counter-attacking space for your opponent, and that can be really difficult. Also, if our midfielders are really anxious to get up in their support, maybe space can even open up behind our back line. So if you get a little bit greedy with the 3 forwards and their understanding of their position is exclusively to stand on as high as they can, you are going to leave yourself exposed for the counter. And I think our video will show how, in this case, the number 7 and number 2 get separated, leaving counter-attacking space for the number 11 in the red and black team.
So, Ian, one thing certainly comes to mind with 3 strikers is, as many coaches, I often find it hard to find 1 striker, let alone 3. What would you suggest to a coach that is struggling to find strikers within their group, and whether or not the 3 strikers makes any sense for that coach?
Yeah, I might actually change the nomenclature. A striker for me would be the 9, the top goal scorer. The 7 and 11 are forwards and they're wide. But one of the challenges is in youth soccer, if you tell children they're forwards and they're the left and right, that might be where they stand the entire time, as high as they can on the left and as high as they can on the right. And that's really not going to help you in most situations with the ball, and certainly not very much without the ball. So one of the things I would be talking to the 7 and 11 about is working the space in and out, so they can come inside the field and they can certainly go outside the field. Do they have the technical ability to get to the byline and cross, or do they have the technical ability to come in the field and shoot? How do they interact with their corresponding fullbacks? Because we looked at the positive, where the corresponding fullback can come in and make a combination, but we also looked at the negative, where if this distance gets too big, there's great space for the opposing 11 to operate in. So there's a number of issues there, but I think intelligent positioning and explaining the roles. And then one of the other things I might do with the player is help him or her with visuals. So for example, the corner of the box is a really easy thing to see. So we might say, when we have possession and we're looking to build, we want you between the edge of the box and the sideline, so you're nice and wide. We might say that, let's say when the ball is out on the other flank, we want you coming into the goal box, but no further than the edge of the 6 yards. So you might use some of the visuals on the field to help the players with basic orientation. That could be a really useful tool for a grassroots player.
Well, thank you very much, Ian, and thank you, coaches, for joining us with us on this edition of Give and Go Live.